I'm Stellio, I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, guys. I'm extremely grateful to be here. I never thought it would be possible that I'd be being able to share 2 years of sobriety with anybody, let alone a day when I arrived in treatment. But I'm going to start at the beginning. Kind of as a young boy, I never had a normal reaction to life. One of my earliest memories was kind of being dropped off at school. And I really believed my mom was never going to fetch me from school again for a long time, for months. Like it was my thing. And every day she'd drop me off at school, and I had this crushing fear that she would never fetch me again. And I kind of, I guess it was just written off as normal childhood stuff or whatever. But my inability to cope with that fear would be something that would lead me down the path that eventually brought me to these rooms. Sorry, I'm really nervous. Kind of my first experience with a substance was, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old. It was a prescription med that that I was already using to sleep, at a very young age. And I remember that I didn't use it to sleep. I fought that feeling and I stayed awake because it felt cool. And then I'd phone people at night, like my school friends, and then I'd go to school the next day and they'd be like, do you remember, what were you phoning me about last night? And I would have no recollection of that whatsoever. And kind of one of my first consequences ever was I swallowed a thumbtack and I got stuck in my throat. And my dad had to rush me off to the hospital at like 2 o'clock in the morning on like a Thursday night or something like that at the age of 10, because I'd been taking those prescription meds, staying awake, talking on the phone, and I had a thumbtack in my mouth. I got a really cool x-ray out of it, and it became about the x-ray and showing everyone the x-ray and check this thumbtack they pulled out of my throat and all this stuff, but I kind of missed the point. But already then something had been set in motion which I would soon figure out that I had no control over. The first time I had a drink was probably at the age of 14, and even then, I just remember how awesome that was, because all that fear that I'd felt up until that point, being quite a scared, timid little boy, was instantly gone. And I was drinking with this other little friend of mine, and I'd find out years later that every drink that I poured for him, he poured out into a bush. Meanwhile, I finished like a whole bottle. And I thought that was awesome, and I vomited all over my parents' house. I made a big mess. This guy was so scared at my behavior that he kind of just sat in a corner waiting for my parents to come home because they'd gone out, in fear of what they might do when they came back and saw me that way. And again, kind of, I think my parents just wrote it off as teenage stuff, and nothing to worry about. But a switch had been flipped in me that day and I knew that I loved substances, and I was going to do substances in any form and drink and use as much of them as I can, no matter what. And soon after that, it kind of progressed very quickly. It reached a point where my father was taking me for urine tests, and Google was like brand new at that stage. Google, yeah, I'm kind of old. Google had just come out, and one of the first things I Googled was, how do I beat a drug test? And it was there. The information was there, and I thought I was a genius because I pulled it off. And every time my dad took me for a drug test, I would, do something that would sort it out. And although all the external factors were saying, listen, this guy's got a problem. I'm falling asleep at school. I've got massive black rings under my eyes. I had this a clear drug test, and that was my kind of saving grace. What happened, kind of throughout my 20s was, I did go to university and stuff like that, and I managed to pass. I barely passed. I'm a guy that's never really finished anything. I kind of had a half-hearted attempt at everything except relationships. I was someone that was always in a relationship, no matter what. As a result, I caused a lot of chaos. I kind of manipulated 2 women into having an abortion because the second responsibility came my way, I would turn left, and I would not want anything to do with that responsibility. It was kind of my pattern. I'd be with someone for a period of time, use and abuse, and then tell them I'm not interested anymore, and kind of move on. And that was my behavior right through, until my 30s. Something that really sticks out for me was, my family, my father's a good businessman, so I never went wanting for anything. I have a fairly normal family, although I don't know what anyone's definition of normal is, but they're pretty normal. And I never went wanting for anything. But every time, because I'm one of these guys that also went to the UK, people in Joburg like to go and do that UK stint. I went and I did the UK stint, and I realized then how unmanageable my life was. Because all of a sudden, without what my family had around me, I was incapable of getting a job. If I did get a job, I would throw it away. I would mess everything up. I would be using on the job, drinking on the job, not caring, phoning home every week, asking for rent money and things like that. And in retrospect, when I look back at that, it was a clear indication of where my life was at the second I was away from my comfort zone. The only constant was the substances and the drinking. And I came back from the UK, and I opened a pub. I had an opportunity to open this little pub, which was a fantastic choice for an alcoholic, because that pub landed me up in rehab within 2 years. It was a cash business. I have fond memories of it, because I was very arrogant there. I met a lot of girls there. I became a little cardboard gangster there, tough guy walking around acting like I knew it all. And within 2 years, that landed me up in the biggest mess that I'd ever been in, which was the first time that the result of my disease was landing me up in a room, locked away for days at a time, with substances and alcohol, and that was the only place that I knew. So I went to treatment after that experience, and I kind of did steps 1, 2, and 3. I was kind of the guy that they wrote off right in the beginning when I walked in the door. I think, because I had an attitude of arrogance and knowing it all around me, and dishonesty, because I wasn't willing to get honest. That I think the counselors picked up on, and I'm sure that they took one look and thought, look, this guy's only going to last 6 weeks, and I only lasted 6 weeks, and that was that. The second that I got out of that treatment center, I think I'd finished steps 1, 2, and 3. I went straight back to a girl that I'd been phoning inside rehab, straight back to a relationship, straight back to my old life. Everything had changed. Nothing had changed, except the fact that I was going to meetings. And I think I did 45 out of my 90, and by the 60th day, I relapsed because I was going to AA meetings and then Nikki Beach at night. So that kind of doesn't really work out very well. Within, as I say, within 60 days, I was already at the bar, ordering a shot, ordering a little Coke and just drinking that much so I could hide the shot in there so no one would know. And I was only fooling myself because my behavior became very bad once again. And the difference is now was that I was in a relationship, and it was going to be a long-term relationship, and basically turned her into a hostage for that period of time. I then got out of treatment. I had to sell the pub. Started working for my dad because the only person that would hire me was my dad. The way that I was, I had good periods and bad periods, but on the whole, it doesn't matter what period I was in, I could not get through one day without using some kind of substance. The only thing that was changing were the times that I had to wake up and use was earlier, and the times I would use until became later. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I was dating someone who was not an alcoholic and didn't use in any way. And after I met her in the beginning, after having come out of that first treatment center to the end of the 6-year period that we'd been together, I was a completely different person, because how it landed up was she was chasing me into Benoni town to find me outside crack dens, picking up prostitutes, asking for directions. I would lie, cheat, and steal. I would go, I'd go to my parents' house. I would manipulate them for money. I'd go shopping in my mom's fridge. you know, when I didn't have money for groceries. Not that I was really eating, but you know what I mean. I would just go and I would take from people what I thought I was entitled to. And how it kind of ended before the second time I got into treatment was I woke up on my living room floor and you know, I was kind of just wanting to die. Like there was I knew that there was all this rope and stuff in the garage, and I knew I was going to trust in Google again and, you know, figure out a way to like make a noose or die through using and drinking. At that point when I woke up, which I believe was my rock bottom, I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, because at that moment I realized that, you know what, death is preferable to this. I would rather die than have to live another day like this. So if it comes through suicide or if it comes through using, I'm okay with that. You know, all bad boys get rescued by their moms in these rooms. Because, you know, I had this idea in my head that I was this, you know, that I was this little bad boy, but, you know, it was my mom that came to me one day, and, you know, she'd seen me like that, and she's been through the mill with me, my mother. I was just with her now recently in Joburg, and, you know, she always tells me about how she'd resigned herself to the fact that one day somebody was going to phone her and say, listen, we found your boy and he's dead. And it's always hard hearing that from your mom, you know, to think that she spent years feeling that and knowing that I might not, you know, make it, and how flippant and arrogant and my devil-may-care attitude surrounding that and her feelings. And you know, she kind of came to me and said that, you know, I need to reach out. I need to do treatment. I need to do treatment while I still can. And I was one of the guys, you know, that dug my heels in at that point, and I'm like, I'm not doing treatment. I don't have a problem. In fact, by that time, I'd taken all my step work from the previous treatment center, and I burnt it. I made a little bonfire in my backyard, because I was like, if I burn this stuff, then that means I'm not an addict, right? Or an alcoholic. And I'd written some shitty letter to God and put it with all my step work and my green and gold, and burnt it. And that was like my offering and my confirmation, you know, that I wasn't an addict. Well, as life would have it, 2 years later, I was in treatment again. And I believe then that I was, you know, sufficiently broken. You know, we had a welcoming group this morning at the treatment center, and we were talking about the gift of desperation. In that moment, you know, when I kind of woke up and I wanted to die, I believe was the moment that I was given that gift of desperation, because something had to change. Something had to change, or death was going to be the only option for me. And from the second that I got to treatment, you know, it was a blessing. It was a blessing, you know. When I woke up that day in my house, my girlfriend had left me. I had no money. I couldn't afford simple groceries. I couldn't put petrol in my car. I'd broken the heart of every single person around me. How I made it through, you know, hospital trips, you know, booking myself into hospital, banging on pharmacy doors, asking for you know, prescription meds to slow me down. You know, how I'd made it, I don't know. At the end of the day, by the time I got into treatment, I was using a cocktail of 7 to 8 substances and alcohol every single day. And enough was enough. And from the second that I walked into treatment, you know, I kind of saw things that I never thought were possible, because I met people that had clean time. You know, as I mentioned, I couldn't get my head around being clean for an hour, never mind a day. And there were people that I met in treatment that had multiple years, 4, 5, 10 years, 30 years plus. And my mind boggled at that. And you know, that gift of desperation coupled with that, I guess was the right time for me to kind of open my eyes up to what this program had to offer. Because everything that I have today is because of this program. And I remember working through steps 1, 2, and 3 again. And yeah, I could grasp the powerless and unmanageability. I could grasp the insanity, because you know, I'd kept repeating the same stuff, expecting like a different result. But then, you know, the God thing. It's always the God thing, you know, that I struggled with. let me tell you, just on God, like when I was 15 years old, I would go to a Sunday youth, and I used to wear a badge that said, "Jesus is coming, look busy." And I would openly mock people that were into God. At my grandmother's funeral, I was clearly the black sheep of the family. I was helping. I was a pallbearer, and I was a black sheep because I was wearing like this bomber jacket and I had black rings under my eyes, and everyone else looked kind of normal. And the priest came to me afterwards, and he said, like, how do you, are you spirit? Like, do you believe in God? I was like, no. And he's like, well, where do you get your answers? And I said, Google. Always Google. My aunt, she passed away in 2014. She had a terrible car accident. Okay, she was a God-fearing woman, and I never had time for her at all. Never had time for her. In fact, when she called me, I wouldn't answer the phone. And she was all of a sudden, in this car accident and in a coma. And the coma was very difficult to watch because her 3 daughters and I were standing in the ICU. And they started praying around her. And I remember at that point being so angry with God, thinking, you know what, God, you're such a tough guy, come down here and take me. Why my aunt? Why my aunt? And what's this praying going to do anyway? Standing there mocking the entire process, where in fact I now can tell you honestly that I have undeniable belief that God exists, because it was that very moment as well with my aunt, which was a turning point for me. Because when I don't deal well with death or things going wrong, that tends to make me use and run. And that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. In fact, I made my aunt's daughters late for her memorial service because I was picking up at the time. So selfish I was. But it was also one of the last pieces of the puzzle that brought me closer to sorting this out for the last time, getting me back into treatment. I kind of arrived in treatment, as I said, done my step 1, 2, and then struggling to get my head around 3, and I find it quite rich, and I share about this now and then, that if Earth is 7 billion years old, right, and modern humans have been around for 140,000 years, that means if you had to put that on a 24-hour timeline, humans have been around for 3 seconds, and I walk in at the age of 34 to my first meeting and second rehab, and I know it all. Come on, it just doesn't make sense. If you take the ingredients for life, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and put them in a dish, not the greatest scientist in the world can create life from that. So it's no chance, it's no mistake that we're here. It's no mistake that I'm here on this journey. It's no mistake that any of us are here on this journey. But I needed somebody to tell me how to wrap my head around the step 1, 2, and 3. And kind of the feedback that I got at the time was, listen, you don't have to worry about that right now. All you got to do is just be willing. Just be willing to try this. And that concept of willingness kind of, seed was planted in me then, and it's kind of been a staple of my recovery ever since. Because I knew that if I had the willingness just to give it a shot, everything else would follow. And it did. And in the beginning, one of the other suggestions that I got was to get on my knees and just ask God to bring it on in the morning. And of course, being the ever bargaining alcoholic, I was like, well, I smoke so much stuff, I keep forgetting. And what I heard then was, well, then put your toothbrush under your bed. So I did that. And slowly but surely, that habit of getting down on my knees in the morning and asking God to bring it on, it kind of grew. And it's something that I do every day. Step 4 and 5 were real turning points for me, because that was what I missed in my previous treatment center. Was I never gave that stuff a chance. I had so many resentments that once I'd done my step 5 with my sponsor, they just got crossed off: unjustified, 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 unjustified. And it was the most freeing experience of my life to sit there, to be able to share that with another person and with God as well, because those were things, resentments were things that I held on to very dearly, because I knew that as long as I hold on to those resentments, I can continue justifying my behavior. And being able to let go of that stuff, some of which went back to, the guys who gave me shit in school. I mean, that's not normal. 34 years old in rehab, and I'm still angry with the guys that bullied me in grade 2. There's got to be something wrong there. But I needed somebody to guide me, somebody who'd been in the steps, who'd done the steps to show me the way out. And that's exactly what I got. And also out of that step 5, I got my list of character defects. And, you know, I loved getting that list of defects. I wrote it down. I wrote it down on the side of my big book. They're still written down on the side of my big book today. Because I was excited, because finally I knew what I had to work with. You know, I knew that if I had the willingness to look at that stuff, you know, then I could do something about it. And my step 5, you know, I've got the fondest memories of that step 5, because another thing that was a massive reservation for me was I thought, you know, how can I just share everything that I've ever done with someone? Only to find out that the person that I shared that with related to exactly what I'd been going through and what I'd done. And the most amazing thing about this program and how it works is now I get to do step 5s with people, and I relate with them, and vice versa. And so this whole beautiful process carries on. Step 6 and 7 for me is like the real action part of this program, you know, because it's kind of like step 6 and 7 is an opportunity from life or God, however you want to see it, to do something different. I'm made this way. I'm going to get a situation, and step 6 and 7 give me the opportunity to realize who I am, what the situation is, and respond instead of reacting like I always do. And step 6 and 7, yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest to apply given the situation, but as long as I'm aware of those defects and I'm aware of the situation and how my behavior has affected me and taken me to bad places previously, I can look at that. Okay. Step 8, step 8 and 9 are wonderful, wonderful steps. Making that list was not easy, because I figured out that all the people that were on my resentment list went straight to like that list in number 8, and at the time I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I can't say sorry to her, my ex-girlfriend's mother. No, you know what I mean. I could never, but I had to, because that is how I found a lot of humility in that. Just by the way, on humility, I've been to many psychologists and psychiatrists, and none of them ever said to me, you need to get some humility, my friend, because that's kind of the only time that I was prepared to look at this program, and the power of it was through being broken and being humbled that way, humiliated to the point of humility. And kind of humility for me in recovery has been about going against my head, greeting someone I don't really like, being honest when my disease is telling me to be dishonest. There's humility and all that kind of stuff. Steps 8 to 9, are steps based on humility, because I'm willing to change my behavior. And right in the beginning, the only thing that I could do was by sitting in these circles, and rocking up to meetings and putting up my hand for clean time, and stop saying sorry to everyone like I always used to. Get here, do treatment, do the time that I was supposed to do, finish the steps, do the best that I can. Those were the only amends that I could make in the beginning. Some of the other amends that I've done have been have been wonderful. I've been able to resolve my relationship with my father. In recovery, I've taken more photos with my father in recovery in these 2 years than I've taken with my father my entire life. My mom and I, she's always been there, trying to pick after me her entire life long. And to be able to be there for her now is a form of amends for me, and to listen to her instead of just shutting her off like I used to do, and spending time with her that's honest and free and means something to her. My sister, who I never had a relationship with ever because of the way that I was. All the guys that used to bully me in school, I used to take that out of my sister. And the only way that I was able to make amends to her was by staying away from a relationship for the first, I actually did it all the way up until 18 months. And my sister phoned my mom the one day and said, you know what, the only way I know that my brother's changed is because he's not in some flaky relationship. He's actually doing what he said he's going to do. And I never knew that would work out to be a form of amends. Another amends I've done is to the road network of South Africa, like trying to drive better because of the way that I used to drive. And you guys have maybe heard this. I've got a little seashell in front of my speedometer And I know that I'm turning too fast when I hear that thing move, or I see it move. Then I know like I'm taking the corners too quickly, and that's something I never would have cared about before. I have an ongoing amends to insects, so I don't kill insects for reasons we don't have to get into right now. But like living in KZN, it gets really testing sometimes. You know what I mean? You like leave anything out and it's covered in ants, and I try not kill them. I only kill them if they're attacking me, which I think is fair enough. Step 10, is that steps 4 through 9. That's my ongoing amends. That's my ongoing amends to myself and to life in general and to this program. Step 10, I've got to do that every day, and it's not easy. It's not easy to take your inventory and admit when you're wrong. And sometimes I'm faced with a choice. How much pain do I want to sit in? How much pain do I want to sit in before I get honest? And I know that I've always got my sponsor and my friends in this fellowship to fall back on. When I'm going through anything, it does not matter what I'm going through. I can pick up the phone and I can get through it. But I can't do that. I will not be willing to pick up that phone unless I'm doing my step 10. My step 11, which I do every night, kind of to the best of my ability. I find and kind of the way that that I do the meditation bit is I do my step 11 at night. Then in the morning, when I wake up, there's that 10 minutes when you're just lying around in bed, like whatever. And in those 10 minutes, I think about what I wrote about in my step 11, and I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I have a program that can allow me to take the worst of what happened the day previous and do something about it in the morning when I wake up. And I wake up, not every morning, but most mornings, and I'm able to reflect back on that stuff just briefly to see what I could do different today. And that brings us to one of my favorite steps, which is the 12th step, because it's always funny, like, how nervous I get before I share. And I always have to think about that it's not about me. It's about that one person in the back who might nod their head once or twice and relate to something I have to say. And that means something to them or encourages them to do this program. That's everything that this is about. Every single one of these meetings, this fellowship and our sister fellowship, all about that new person that walks in the door. And I get excited. I get excited when I see newcomers. Because if I could just give you a pill to, that's a bad thing. If I could just give you what I have in an instant, I would want you to have it more than anything else. Because the life that I live in recovery today is incredible. I followed suggestion after I got out of treatment. As I said, I stayed away from relationships. I got a humble job, and I worked. I kind of worked at a guest house here, doing whole bunch, anything from fixing the website to sweeping the garden to washing dishes, making fruit salad in the morning. I make a really killer breakfast now, by the way, because of my experience there. Just going against my head, doing things I never thought I would do, and that didn't work out. It didn't work out there, and through following suggestion, I started working at a dive center here in Umkomaas. And this is when I also knew that God was having a hand in things, because I'd done a dive course many years ago with my father. In fact, it was one of the last things that I'd done with my father before my alcoholism really took over. And my dad, I was having a phone call with him, and he was saying, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, it's not working out here at the guest house, but I've got an opportunity here at this dive center, so I'm going to, maybe just have a look there. And he said, oh, well, I've still got all your dive equipment. It's been sitting in my garage for 10 plus years. Been trying to sell it, nobody ever bought it. And I was able to get all that stuff from Joburg down here, started working at this dive center through somebody in the fellowship, where I did 50-something dives that didn't cost me anything. The only price was that I had to deal with customers, look after people, wash a few boats. But the things that I saw here in the ocean and the passion that's given me for life, when it's 7 o'clock, on a Monday morning and there's whales and dolphins jumping around and you go diving. I've done shark diving. And that's something else, because as an alcoholic, I have a lot of fear, which is not real fear. It's fear that I come up with in my head. But when I was standing on the edge of that boat and there were fins going like this, and they were all chawing, from the baits or whatever that they'd put in the water, that was real fear. And in that moment, I was able to reflect and think, you know what? step three, I'm going to do this. And I just jumped in and I was fine. And I dived with the sharks 15, 20 times. I've also taken up surfing, which is something that's very, very special because, the last time that I came down to the coast in active addiction, I wouldn't even put my toes in the sand because I hated the idea of sand. And now, once I'm in the ocean, you can't get me out. I'm in there for hours. I only climb out again to go reapply suntan lotion because no hair, it burns a lot. And I've had incredible experiences, humbling experiences in the ocean because, not only is it about getting that zest for life again and also fellowship, because my favorite time surfing are with my friends from this fellowship. But I remember once we went out in this little bay down here and we couldn't get back to the ocean. Some rip tide was taking us and the waves were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I went into a flat-out panic. I was just about to start crying, and I said to Jared, I said, listen, I don't know what to do. We've got to get out. We've got to get out. Tell me what to do. And he said, just chill, just relax, let the riptide take us. And it's kind of a metaphor for recovery because I was there my whole life, fighting, trying to get to this point in the distance that I thought I needed to be at. Till somebody who had more experience than me came and said, listen, just hang back, let the riptide take you. And you know what, the riptide took us, and it took us about 200 meters up the coastline, and a couple of minutes later, caught a few waves in, and boom, I was back on solid ground again. And it's such a lovely metaphor for recovery because, I had to be humbled, I had to fight, I had to take suggestion, and I had to figure out that maybe God wanted me on the beach all the time, all along, So many incredible things have happened in recovery. The fellowship, that I've experienced in recovery has been amazing, because when I got into, just before I got into recovery, nobody phoned me, nobody invited me anywhere. I used to resent people because, my WhatsApp just sat silent. You know what I mean? Nobody really wanted to spend any time with me. And the kind of friends and relationships that I've developed in recovery have been incredible for good reasons and for bad. I would wish for everyone in this room to experience a real recovery brotherhood like I have with several members here today. And one that stands out for me was, it was a Monday night, and I didn't really want to go to a meeting, but I woke up, I was having a nap, and I woke up about 15 minutes before the meeting, and I thought, okay, well, that usually means I've got to get to the meeting. So I went to the meeting, and a very good friend of mine was sharing, and he was sharing because he'd just got his son back from Joburg, and his son was sitting on his lap, and he was talking about how happy he was, and I could see that his phone was ringing in his pocket. And at the time, my friend's wife was in treatment. She'd run away, and that phone call that was ringing in his pocket was to tell him that she'd passed away. She'd overdosed because of this disease. And we didn't know it yet, and I gave him a lift home after the meeting, and it was literally his little boy's first day back in with his dad, and he took the phone call, and I sensed something was wrong, and he said to me, please, you got to take me to hospital. You got to, we've got to go identify her. I don't know what's happened. We've got to just go. And because of this fellowship, we were able to take that little boy to a safe place. Me and my friend hopped in my car, and we went, and we searched for her for 2 hours in a hospital in Durban. And that was the first time that I connected with the power of this thing, because I'd done a lot of using and drinking, never really believing that would happen to me, till I saw it for myself. And it was strange, because it was the first time that she looked like she was at peace. And I relate to that, because when I woke up that day and I wanted to overdose or kill myself, I know that turmoil that leads to that point. And most importantly, unlike what happened with my aunt, I was able to stay there and be there for my friend and be a shoulder to cry on and be reliable. Get the job done, and her death was not in vain either, because I get to share about it today, and he gets to share about it today, about the power of this, because I never believed it. I never believed it till I was almost there myself. Amazing things have happened in recovery. There's so much stuff that's happened in 2 years. You know, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to talk about it all. The greatest gifts have come also in a new relationship. You know, as I said, I kind of respected the, you know, staying out of a relationship for a year. Got all the way to 18 months, and then there was this girl that used to go to meetings, and I used to glare at her, and I used to think, don't know if I like that girl. She was kind of looking at me that way as well. And we finally, I don't know, we were looking for a venue for another meeting in Durban, whatever, and we found all of a sudden this common ground, and then there was all of a sudden this little spark, you know, and it kind of turned into a coffee date. My sponsor said, "Hey, you can do that. Cool." Like, I ran everything past my sponsor every step of the way, and that's when I had an appreciation for the timing of this, you know, like, because everything in recovery has presented itself. The timing has been right. You know, recovery's kind of given me the gift of being able to go with my gut and not focus on the 100 justifications in my head as to why I shouldn't follow my gut. And you know, the most amazing relationships, experiences, and being able to help others, you know, has resulted because of recovery. And you know, this program is something that I would like to practice every day till I die, because I'm actually so grateful to be an alcoholic. And I never thought that I would be able to say that one day, but this life that being an alcoholic that's managed to find recovery has given me is incredible. So thanks for letting me share.